Absolute Flash, issue 6, Jeff Lemire writing with Nick Robles on the art. So, yeah, last issue, Wally obviously suited up, and interestingly, I was surprised that, like, people like Ralph and Linda, like, saw who he was and, like, know that he's in the suit and that he's doing stuff. Obviously, there's not been a resolution to that yet. This issue, though, doesn't really give us much follow-up on that, because we go into flashback mode and we explain how the rogues were kind of recruited for the current team they're in. And they're actually literally rogues in this, in that they were serving in some sort of military outfit and went rogue and took a bribe from some other country. So they're all on the shit list. But Wally's dad goes around recruiting them for the current lab things, and we get a little bit more of a tease of Eleanor Thawne, of course, who we see in the flashbacks, but we also see in present day at the end when she I don't think she kills him, but I think she just like sort of like kidnaps Wally's dad by putting the bag over his head and knocking him out. So
she disappears him for sure.
Yes.
Right? Like
that's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
I really love this because it felt like there was, and we've talked about this when it comes to this book, when there's a central point to focus on, it's really good. Lemire can really go. And going through and introducing us all to these rogues and kind of the sorry state they're in and why they chose to go work for Wally's dad, I really like slowly uncovering all of these and the dynamics between them, and the fact that Glider, right, is paraplegic, and so that's why Len is looking after her in this one, right? And it definitely made me feel a bit more like, what's the word I'm looking for? Not sympathy. Sympathy's not the right word, but seeing them that they're essentially just hired guns that in order to come in and clean up this mess of Wally ending up with the Speed Force or however it goes. Well, I really like that dynamic shift here.
Yeah, I think what's interesting to me is that clearly they were all a team before any of them had any abilities or anything like that. Like, they were just working together. Obviously, Leonard's sister ended up, getting injured and losing her legs. And that partly becomes part of the motive for why they're going to work with them. It's like, hey, because obviously this is a surprise to us because obviously she was, running around and whatnot before. And obviously by the end of this issue, they show her, hey, here's your fancy robot legs that we're going to give you. But, it's like, hey, you're going to get boomerang, you're going to get fancy boomerang tech that, like, you're going to love using these. We've got technology that's, like, otherworldly. And, of course, when Trickster's like, where did you get this technology? It's, like not in this world. And there's, like, a quick flashback to, like, what sounds like Eobard Thawne and Jay Garrick having some sort of fight about the Speed Force. And then
back in 1944?
Yeah, back in JSA times, and it just cuts back to Barry's face with a smirk saying that's classified, and I'm like, oh, Lemire, you tease. So like, hey, interesting stuff, and definitely also establishes that the Thawnes had some conflict with other Flashies in the past, even if they weren't called Flashies back then, because seemingly, why would they be? Right.
Well, because we don't know what happened with Jay. He gets pushed in there.
That's true.
And that's it.
Well,
right? We don't know
if I was to make a guess, either he comes back out with some of this fancy tech from wherever he went, or he just pops back out of the Speed Force at some point in present day, and he's going to be around at some point. That would be my two guesses. But so, like we get like a sense of these characters. We get Leonard looking after his sister, even though she's really grumpy and doesn't want help. And yeah, they all get made this offer, and we get a better sense of who they are, and ultimately they're going to agree to this. It's like, hey, and so we see a little bit more of the experiments. We see some gorillas and a thing. We see that there's basically a Mirror Master kind of experiment going on with a guy sticking his hand through like a mirror and the hand coming out. They talk about that being teleportation. There's also another lab at one point that made me notice the name. I can't remember what it was now, but there was like another one named after a Flash villain that was like this kind of experiment. So, they're really teasing all this stuff, and kind of in the same way that Absolute Batman's like having this Arkham like thing run by this evil company to be like the source of where a lot of the villains and characters like get their powers from. It seems like we're doing a similar thing here with Absolute Flash, where this lab is leading to a lot of the different characters that usually exist in the Flash universe. So they're happening a bit quicker than they normally would, and making them feel a bit more tied together. Which, on the one hand, it's like, okay, it does feel like everything's tied together, which I would hate if that was a retcon to regular continuity. But as like an alternate universe, I can kind of roll with it and understand why it's like it's neater to have everything come from the same source.
Yeah, because always the idea that Flash's villains have tech that try to keep him, try to disrupt his Speed Force powers, right? The boomerangs, the cold gun, the flame gun, or the, heat waves gun, whatever that is. Here, the tech all coming from one source, and then that source being tied to whatever Wally's going through, too. I think it's some crafty storytelling. And will it pay off? I'm not sure yet. Because I have questions about that gorilla, right? Because we have Grodd, So what's that gorilla going on here? Like, is that supposed to be Salivar? Or is there a Gorilla City still in this universe?
Yeah, I don't know.
Those type of questions.
That could just be the mother of Grodd or something, because if they have been working in a lab to make this Grodd, maybe they had to do something to a pregnant gorilla to make it happen. I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess, the big ending, obviously, as we kind of got to, was like, present day, Wally seemingly calls his dad finally to say, hey, something's happening, I'm freaking out. And just as he's about to start like talking to him and give him some sort of like hope or like instructions, the bag comes over his head, and it's Eleanor Thawnes and her grunts that are grabbing him. So it's a fun cliffhanger. I do think this backstory in the Rogues was a wise thing, and I guess this was probably the right place to put it. As much as there was stuff that I wanted to see more of from last issue, I do think that kind of worked as the end of an arc, and if this is like the end of the first collection, this makes sense, or maybe the start of collection 2. But either way, this was a decent cliffhanger for this month's issue, so I kind of get it. So, no. I mean, I think that this book, definitely over the last like 3 issues has definitely felt a lot more coherent and focused. Like, it took a few issues to kind of get into it and start to feel like we were building like a supporting cast around things, and I do genuinely think it feels a lot more like there. It feels a lot more like cohesive now into issue 6 than it did back at say issue 3, and I'm pleased that it's like, and it was never bad, but it was definitely the weakest absolute book for a bit, and I might still say it's the weakest absolute book, but it's not by the same margin as it was. Like, now it's just a little bit under whatever the next one is.
Yeah, there's that. Also, just the idea of Barry being partners with Thawne. Like, what's that business relationship like? Like, how is this Barry, right? Because he's not a lab scientist for the police, like in traditional continuity. He's doing like, full on theoretical physics lab stuff. So like, what's he in this for? Because it seems like Thawne's a pretty bad, as we've seen, we've gotten teases for that one shot that's coming out with all the villains teaming up in the Absolute Universe. So like, but what was he up to? Is he actually just trying to do good? And now that he's gone, she's able to fully embrace the bad side? Did
he know that she was bad? Like, I mean, we don't even know that at this point.
No, so because there's that, there's that panel where he says, my partner, Dr. Eleanor Thawne, I can't wait to show you, and it's all the weapons. It's all that type of tech that they've been working on. It doesn't seem to come off as sinister. It's almost like he's excited to show somebody, look at all the cool stuff we've been working on. So yeah, there's this, put a little bit of some breadcrumbs along the way too. And I especially want to know what's been going on in the Mojave Desert since 44 with the Speed Force, right? Like with Jay and this whole secret area. I mean, that they're at.
1944 like instantly made me think, especially with it's in that desert. I was like, oh, is this like tied to nuclear testing and things like that? I was wondering if it was going to be filling into that bit of history. Then again, who's to say what the 40s were like in the Absolute Universe? It might not have anything to do with what happened in the real world, like normal. So who knows?
Yeah. But yeah, no, I really enjoyed this issue. But I have a soft spot for the Rogues, and so to see them here, kind of not, I don't get the vibe that Captain Cold's a bad guy. He did some bad things, right? But overall, he's trying to do this to care for his sister. That's why he's on the run for whatever they did. I get the vibe that he's, there's some good in there. And that's always a version of Captain Cold that I like. I like the blue collar, looking out for his friends and family type guy. you know, and just the beginning with Boomerang, just how much of a problem he is. I'm glad that's consistent across these universe. You know, he's getting into bar fights, calling dudes ugly and whatever. So there's a lot of fun little character pieces in here.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this was a fine kind of interlude chapter, fleshing out some of the other characters, which is nice. I think this book, you know, I think introducing Linda and Ralph was a really good touch in the last couple, and then I think here fleshing out these Rose characters is only helping me enjoy the book more, because it's making more of the ensemble feel fleshed out, which is something that I think it was lacking those first 3 issues. Whereas I think the other Absolute books, for the most part, obviously Superman doesn't quite apply in the same way, but like, you know, Batman having that group of friends that are actually some villain characters and things like that really, you know, give that like a sort of like a supporting group around them that was kind of anchored the book for me. Even Absolute Green Lantern had, you know, a lot of characters kind of immediately. It was like, hey, here's Joe and Hal and John, like they're all kind of there interacting. Whereas with this, it really did feel like Wally was off on his own, being chased for a few issues. So I'm really glad that these last few issues have kind of expanded upon all that and made it feel like there's more of a group around them. So, all right, what are you giving Absolute Flash?
I'm gonna go straight 8.
I think I'm going to go 7.5. I don't think I'm going to quite call it great, but I do think it was a pleasant issue.